Higgins here, representing the Law Committee. I'm going to ask all the members of Audit and Finance to introduce themselves, and then the Law Committee. And then first up will be Mr. Connors from the Probation Department. So starting with Mr. Grimm, my Vice Chair of Audit and Finance Committee.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please, where are you from?
Oh, 29th District, beautiful town of Guilderland.
Rich Mendick, I'm from the 36th District, covering Selkirk, South Bethlehem, parts of Glenmont.
Bill Clay, wow.
One Willingham, 3rd.
Peter Krause, 24th, from the Law Committee, representing South Colony.
Ray Joyce, 13th. Joe O'Brien, 25th, West Albany and Loudonville.
Dennis Sweeney, 28th, Guilderland.
Charlie Dawson, Chair of the Audit and Finance Committee meeting from Delmar and Glenmont.
Christopher Higgins, Chair of the Law Committee, member of the Audit and Finance Committee, 5th District, downtown Albany.
Joanne Cunningham, member of the Law Committee, and I represent the 34th District.
Vicki Blonsky, member of the Law Committee. I represent the 38th District, town of Scotland and Bethlehem.
Dave Mayo, Law Committee, 20th District, and I represent the best part of Latham.
We all set?
No. Paul Bergdorf, Law and Audit and Finance, and I have the best part of Latham, and the best part of Loudonville, and the best part of the village of Colony.
When I grow up, I want to be just like you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, Mr. Connors. I hope you can hear me. Head of the Probation Department. Who do you have with you?
This is Colleen Breslin, she's the Deputy Director.
Welcome. So you're kicking us off here, as I was talking to you a little while ago. If you could just give us a rundown on Raise the Age, since that seems to be one of the big areas in the budget we need to deal with this year. Appreciate it.
So, before I go into Raise the Age, I was hoping I could just bring everybody up to speed on, prior to Raise the Age, what happens to a juvenile as they're processed by the police and come to the county, and then what's going to change with Raise the Age, which became effective October 1st for 16-year-olds. So, before Raise the Age, a juvenile was considered 7 years old to 15 years old. What had happened is the police would arrest the child and they would give him or her a parents ticket to appear at our probation department. And at that time, we would screen the child for suitability if we could provide services to the child and their family. If we could, we would set up an intake assessment, which is much more comprehensive, determine action about what services we're going to offer the child. So last year we did about 350 intakes at Juvenile Department of juveniles that were arrested in Albany County for different JD acts. So at the initial conference, and it's an in-depth interview, we perform an assessment, a screening instrument. At that time, it's voluntary services if they want to continue to cooperate with us. If they don't, they have access, they're offered the ability to go to court. In the case, in that situation, would be referred to the county attorney for prosecution in family court, right, if the child did not want to cooperate with our services. So we offer an array of services at our intake department. We have some I'll just name a couple programs. If you get any questions at all, you can please ask. A juvenile accountability board, we call it JCAP, where the juvenile appears in front of a group and they hear the crime that they did and they offer a resolution. Sometimes it involves victims, other times it's just community service. It could essay writing, stuff like that, to make the victim whole. We offer just straight community service. We also offer a couple, we call them ERCs, Evening Reporting Centers for Juveniles in Albany County. We have a boys center at LaSalle and a girls at St. Anne's, where youth can go and they get more in-depth services, skill building, help with homework, that kind of stuff with social workers. We also have a probation officer there. We also refer cases to local youth courts. In many situations, we refer outside if they need substance abuse, mental health, prevention services at DFY, also family-based services. And sometimes we take the child out of the home and offer respite services, separation from the family. Or they may go to Berkshire Farms, and their goal would be to reunite the family. So this is what we did until October 1st. On October 1st, 17-year-olds became juvenile delinquents. And next year, October, or 16-year-olds, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So 16-year-olds became juvenile delinquents.
15 to 16.
Yeah, and then 17-year-olds become juvenile delinquents next year. So the Raise the Age created a lot more opportunity and responsibility for the probation department to handle these children as they're processed. So it's 100% reimbursement. It also created a new court in Albany County called AO Court, Adolescent Court, and that's housed in Albany County Family Court. Judge Richard Rivera will handle that court. So if a 16 or 17-year-old, or 16-year-old now, 17 next year, is arrested, if it's a felony, it would automatically go to AO Court. At that time, it has up to 30 days to determine if it would go back to family court, and we would offer services. So it's anticipated we're going to have 400 new additional juveniles when this law is fully implemented. 150 would start out as felonies in AO court, and approximately 30 to 40 may stay in AO court that continue to be prosecuted as an adolescent offender. But that's still considered a criminal court. They would go to DOCS, and they would be housed at a designated juvenile detention facility in New York State. So we would offer, we would double up on the services that I already talked about at intake, and we also would offer new services that are available under Raise the Age funding. Now, I can go over a couple of these new programs that we have. Some of the program that we're going to offer is called Brief Intervention Assessment Tools. It's called BITS for short. It's an evidence-based programming of workbooks that the respondent juvenile works with the probation officer on many issues: self-esteem, anger, self-awareness. We'd also get into a contract with an organization to provide MST, multi-systematic therapy, intense family therapy for juveniles and their families. That would be contracted with an agency outside of our agency. We're also going to provide a program called Girls Circle, where a probation officer leads it. It provides many modules of different components for females, including self-esteem, peer relationships, things like that. We'd also offer graduated sanctions for juveniles, and graduated sanctions may include incentives, water bottle, gift cards, that kind of stuff. Some of the things, those are new. Some of the things we're going to expand on, which is currently only offered in our adult division, which is now available for juveniles, is Thinking for the Change, which we have many probation officers trained in. Thinking for a Change. It's an evidence-based cognitive behavioral intervention program, which develops many issues in programming skill set when a probation officer leads. We also offer a Career University, which is a program geared towards employment and retaining school. We also expand our ERCs that we had talked about. A couple ADTs, alternatives to detention. If a case were to get to court, many times the judge returns it to us. We call it ADTs. We're going to offer electronic monitoring, GPS, make that available for the judges in family court. Offer extensive respite. Going to expand both our ERCs and juvenile release under supervision from the judges.
All right, let me ask you a big picture question here. It sounds like this is going to cost a lot of money.
It is.
And where is that money coming from?
Yeah. So we projected 1.9 million as an increase for the probation department.
1.9 million.
1.9 million, which is fully reimbursable from the state. All Raise the Age matters are reimbursable. So 542 million would go to personnel, or staffing, I'm sorry, staff. 542,000 would go to staffing, and 1.4 million would go to programming and staffing to run the programming and overtime, and for fees of service that we're going to contract with outside agencies to perform these services that we're required to offer juveniles.
Has the state signed off on,
Mr. Higgins, Chair of the Law Committee and also a member of Audit and Finance.
has the state signed off on the county's plans to date for the use of this money? Do we know that they have guaranteed that we're going to be reimbursed for these specific programs that you proposed?
No, they haven't. We've had one review, and I'm still waiting for the probation review. The money is outlined, is supposed to be available incrementally to us through each quarter as Rate GH progresses. So we have to provide, I had to provide projected timeframes of hiring. It wouldn't be, obviously, we wouldn't ask for all staffing at once, it would be incrementally available. So this quarter, this year, even though Raise the Age is going in effect right now, they're not giving me enough money for a staff for this first quarter, Raise the Age. So we've received several cases that fall under Raise the Age, but we're just continuing to manage that.
So do you think you'll be fully staffed up by the end of the fiscal year for the county?
No.
Starts on January 1st.
No, we're not going to be,
The rollout's going to take a couple of years because you're going to...
I think it would take into 2020, we projected 14 staff, I think 12 staff through next year, and another 2 staff the following year. The state fiscal year is different from the county, so it projects another year out.
So, what kind of staffing ratio are you going to be having under the new program?
So all the information we provided, the literature, is they've given us the formula of ratio PO
Probation officer?
to respondents to juveniles as they project the numbers will continue to increase. So juvenile numbers that they project for us are up to 400 additional children we're going to need to serve at our probation intake.
Can you say that again?
Our projected numbers are up to 400 additional juveniles that are 16 and 17 once it's fully implemented that we're going to have to serve at the probation intake.
So your staff ratio is going to be approximately what when you're fully geared up? How many clients are you going?
So an average, so an intake officer, so there's several components to Raise the Age. So there's intake, they'll pay for a PDI writer that writes the reports once they get to court. And there's the back end of court. Once the county attorney prosecutes the case, many of the cases return to us under some type of release, ADT, from the court or a formal probation sentence from a judge in court, which could last up to a year. But our ratio of caseloads in juvenile could be between 15 to 20 per officer.
So you've got a lot of staff you're going to be hiring.
Yes.
Hopefully it's going to be reimbursed by the state. In the past, you've had to deal with a lot of turnover, at least my 20 years here.
Yes, turnover
Is there a way that we can help you with that?
A lot of people love the job, being a probation officer. They love working with children. They love working with any type of offender that they're assigned to. One of the issues is monetary. So being close to the center of government for New York, many of our staff seek out jobs at the state, paying higher service. I think many of them leave, they're at a lower rate.
Our health insurance is a lot better though.
Yeah. So they leave at a lower rate, but they, after a significant number of years, they end up making equal amounts or more money in 10 or 20 years, which they project. So I don't know if we're going to prevent that. I mean, monetarily, I think the wages that a probation officer makes are more than fair, they're adequate. They make a good salary, but people are what I can do. They want to make more money, no matter where they are in life. Any kind of job, people want to make more money, and a lot of people are tempted by different opportunities at the state to take advantage of that.
So just following up on the ratio, the 15 to 20 per officer, how does that fit with what's in the state statutory requirement within that window? How are we going to compare to what the state's allowing?
That is what the state is allowing. That is part of their plan. We have to formulate how many staff we're going to hire per child coming in. So that's when I have my review by the state, that's what we're going to look at. If I'm over, they're not going to give me enough. Or they're going to obviously hold back So I'm fully aware of that, unless the state says we're gonna get this money, I would not ask budget or you to consider hiring anybody, but these are what our projected numbers are based upon the plan we were given to present to the state.
So just two questions, and I'll turn it over. Do you know, does your budget contemplate those hirings on a rolling basis?
Exactly, yeah. It's incrementally available each quarter. I have a spreadsheet that projected how much they're gonna give us each quarter based upon all the statistics that we did. We worked on this for many months in presentation to the state.
We would very much like a copy of that.
Yeah, I have it, I can give you that.
Just one follow-up, going back to the state. Have they provided us with a reimbursement schedule? I mean, they're not guaranteeing, once we appropriate the funding that you're asking for the program, they're not guaranteeing that they're going to reimburse, if they don't approve the plans, correct? Then they're not gonna, we're on the hook for the remainder.
I don't see that as an issue. I see sustainability as an issue past 2021. We haven't received confirmation how much money the money will continue to flow after that.
So it's your belief that we're gonna be reimbursed fully for it, and shouldn't be concerned that they're gonna put us on the hook for $100 grand here, or $100 grand there?
I won't ask to hire unless they can give us the money.
Okay.
And anyone that gets hired is, I've already talked to Sean, they would have to be considered provisional because we don't know if the money's gonna continue to flow or not.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
you have people off lists all ready to go.
We have, I've been working on a list for a couple openings now. We're giving a new test early next year. Generally, we have probably between 60 and 80 candidates every time I have a test that I can go through for civil services.
So Sean, you comfortable with the upfront first instance payment from the county?
Well, and as you can see in the budget,
Is this what we're going to use Wilson Elser for?
that.
No.
As you can see, we pretty much pinpointed every position that we could here, just to make it so it's evidently clear. If there is a change or something, that is that position there.
Any questions, members of the committee? We're going to move on to Mr. Grimm,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and then Ms. Willingham, and then Mr. Bergdorf, and that'll be it. And then we can follow up with other questions, possibly in writing or on the phone.
You moved from 102 employees to 117, so you're adding 15 employees. This is page 174 of the budget.
I got you. We need to share because-
Raise the age.
Yes,
And the
raise the
information
age.
that you provided this committee, you're listing 14 positions. So I'm wondering, what is the other position, you know?
In my narrative that I had to return to the county, I lost one probation officer that left late last year. That was zero this year, is returned to the budget for this year.
Okay. How are you going to measure how successful, this is obviously uncharted territory, and to a certain extent, there's an estimate on how many employees you're going to need, and you estimate how many new folks are going to come into the system, obviously. How are we going to measure how well we do? What are the practical outcomes that we can look to?
Our measure of success at intake, generally, we have a 75% success rate, where we can say we successfully adjusted that case. The child came in, we met with them, we provided services, and we hopefully it will never see him again. It won't happen again, he won't come back. We hope to increase that.
And by that, you mean 75%, there's no problems after, once you've had them in the detention?
So at our intake, it's a voluntary service. We can work with the child for initial 60 days. We can extend it for a second 60 days with the family court judge's authority. So we can effectively work with children with juvenile delinquency for 120 days.
Willingham?
Yes, just for clarification, when you said the number 400, was that for just this year, or are you anticipating that number for next year also?
Next year, this full implementation.
Oh, okay, and then the 1.9 million, is that what you said?
Yes.
Is that for both years?
Yes, both years.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's gradually incrementally available each quarter according to state fiscal year as our numbers are projected to increase.
Okay, so I just want to ask one other question. Where are these 400, where are they being served now?
They're not. These are 16 to 17-year-olds that were formerly considered adults. So last year in Albany County, there were 550 16 to 17-year-olds that were arrested in Albany County for various amounts of crimes. They went to all the criminal courts, all the town courts, the village courts, the city courts, in some situations, county court for more serious crimes. And often were incarcerated in Albany County Jail, and and some did go to prison.
Mr. Bergdorf, you okay?
This is sort of more of a holistic question for Sean. You know, we've heard from the sheriff, now the probation department, we heard from the DA. I know we're going to hear from social services, children and finance, that everyone's impacted by Raise the Age. And to the extent that you have gone through the budget and you've tried to list every Raise the Age position and cost, we're also hearing that there is no demonstrable state reimbursement program yet. Holistically, do you have an estimate for what the total cost across all departmental lines is?
I believe it's around 8 million total, so.
So the summary of all these programs?
I can get you that definitive, but it's around, it's around 8 million total.
It's about $8 million. So, the chairman sort of touched on that, which is we're laying out $8 million upon the promise
Well,
of
that's
this.
fully implemented, and I gather we're gonna have kind of a rollout here, and we're gonna be making sure that, you know,
So everything,
yeah,
everything is about
provisional employees,
children not being detained, either in detention center or being placed as in a more place at a longer period of time. We know that every day a child is detained will lead to a less successful life.
So, we obviously all want the program to be successful. This is the approach that the state has taken. You know, we want to support you on it. But as you can tell, there's not a great deal of trust in our state legislature and governor
So I
to
have
deliver
some
on these. So,
experience with the state and grants, and I know a lot of things they do in the past is performance-based. So what I looking forward on this and my experience with it in the past, I think we're probably going to get most of the money, but as things roll out at the final end of the year, at the end of 2021, when things are fully implemented, if our numbers are less, that's when I would see a reduction in numbers. So to be honest, juvenile delinquency is decreasing each year. The decrease is 20% each year. So our number of 400.
so the number of births.
Right. So the number of 400 was based on arrest data from a year ago, and going forward, I'm sure it's going to be lower this year and lower again in each subsequent year. And at the end of the projected time, they may say, well, we funded you for this, but you can't serve that many kids anymore in Albany County because they're not being arrested.
Thank you very much for coming down, Mr. Connors, Ms. Breslin. Thank you.
Thank you.
We may have some follow-up questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Judge? We're on the public defender now. Oh, Mr. Pardon?
How about now?
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Oh, I thought you had, I have 3 questions.
Well, I have one question.
All right. Mr. Connors? I'm sorry, we got one more question. I didn't see a hand go up
I
there.
heard mention of Wilson Elser, and you jumped, and I'm sorry about that. You seem to know nothing about it. What's going on with Wilson Elser?
No, isn't that a representative for us to help us with the state?
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
well, that's my.
Is that in the
that's my
budget somewhere?
understanding. Not that I know of.
Well, you brought it up.
Yeah.
He balks at it.
The
gentleman, Mr. Connors
The
didn't
cab
seem
approved
to
it, the
know
cab
anything
approved the
about it.
contract today, so that's why I was saying that. The cab approved, representation today. So we're trying to get this money to come back that we're asking, to get reimbursed. I thought maybe that would be one way we'd be.
I know they're a lobbying firm.
Yeah.
I mean, I know who they are, I know of them,
Wilson
but,
Elser doesn't exist anymore.
Well,
It's now Jackson Lewis.
no, it's not Jackson Lewis.
no,
It's still Wilson Elser, and Jackson Lewis is a break-off of Wilson Elser.
yeah, there was a contract approved today for $99,999.99.
Solid. No above that.
That's a max.
99,000, which is the limit.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. From the law, well, we were gonna ask that question.
I'll certainly discuss that.
I see there'll be a lot of
Thank you,
discussion
Mr.
when you
Lynch.
just.
Thank you very much, you're out of here.
Good point. Thanks for bringing it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I want to know more about that thing. $99,999. Take the reason for that one.
They're all 99.
Yeah, they just proved the contract today. Members all set? Yes, sir. Judge, why don't we continue with raise the age and how it affects your department?
With me is
Thank you.
Jane Pearson Curtis, who's my office manager and can count much higher than I, and she helps me with the numbers.
Welcome, thanks for coming.
Raise the age to us. The Albany County Public Defender's Office will be handling representation of every person under the age of 17 who is arraigned in either the youth court at Family Court Building or in a youth part in designated local criminal courts during off hours. Our counsel at first appearance attorneys will be handling the arraignment. If it's a misdemeanor, they're automatically converted to juvenile delinquency and go to family court. With felonies, if an appearance ticket is not issued on an E felony, if it's a higher grade felony, and the court considers remand one way or the other, whether they're remanded to a secure juvenile facility, youth facility, or they're given an appearance ticket, they'd be required to appear at the next scheduled adolescent session in the, or youth part in the adolescent court and family court. And the public defender will be representing every child, every adolescent during the time that they are still considered an adolescent unless it's converted to juvenile delinquency. If it becomes a juvenile delinquency matter, then their representation would change to one of the assigned counsel off of the state panel.
So Judge, I understand you're asking for two positions for later raise.
Based on the anticipated increase in traffic in family court for the adolescent part, we are requesting when the reimbursement is set. We're not trying to get anybody.
So you two will be reimbursed 100%?
100% for
once these positions are approved.
an attorney and the one, I think, legal secretary, and all of the equipment and furnishings for the office space in the family court building. The arraignment, the compensation of the stipends for the attorneys that appear for arraignment during off hours would be covered by the counsel at first appearance. 2, which has been approved and which is in the process of getting finalized through the county at this time. So that's no additional cost to the county. There's no cost to the county for that.
So what's the time frame on that again? I'm sorry.
Well, it's passed the legislature. I think it's ready to get signed, counsel at first appearance. So right now, we're waiting for a signed contract.
Okay. So,
all right. We're just waiting for a counsel at first appearance, the second grant distribution to be finally approved.
So
right now we're proceeding still under counsel at first appearance, first distribution.
Okay. So as important as raise the age is, I think the part that's going to impact you the most, right, is the indigent legal defense aspect. That's what, and I'll turn that over to you, Chris. You want to?
Well, counsel at first appearance is going to cover the arraignment for every person who is charged and appears in local court, regardless of whether they're qualified for public defender representation. And that's the purpose. Every person arraigned off hours is entitled to legal representation, and that's where counsel at first appearance has segued to.
So where's the leadership?
That's why the increase.
Can I just segue into some, just a couple different questions, Judge? There's some significant salary increases in your proposed budget for some of the attorneys in your office.
Yes, sir.
And I was wondering if you could address
That,
why they're above the 2% that the executive proposed, how many there are, and how you
There
arrive
are-
at that methodology specifically.
there increases in salary for our entry-level positions are for the purpose of keeping those positions competitive in the current market. The increase over the 2%, or the increase, is being paid for by the quality improvement portion of the statewide ILS grant distribution. And I use the word grant in quotes because this is based on the Harrell Herring court case, which is a New York State Supreme Court case, which is 4 years old yesterday. And it's a stipulation. It has not been appealed. It's the law of the land. And it requires, of the 5 counties that were involved, certain improvements for indigent legal representation. Governor Cuomo's budget bill for 2017 incorporated most of the aspects of Harrell Herring, except for family court indigent representation. So part of that is quality improvement, and the raises in the proposed executive budget are quality improvement ILS state money.
So, but it's your position that $71,400 is an appropriate entry-level salary for someone?
No, it's not. It's 61 or 65,000 entry level.
65,000.
Yes, 71.4 is what my assistant public defender twos, which are felony defense attorneys, are getting paid, and then they move up based on experience and time with the county.
So would the state money cover the public twos also?
If they're above 2%, everything above 2% is covered by quality improvement. What we were told by ILS is that you cannot increase salaries across the board for everybody on your staff, but we want salaries to be competitive with the prosecution, equal playing field, and they're increasing salaries, and I think over the 5 years through March 31 of 2023, the state will be increasing salaries or proposing increases in salaries that they are paying for throughout that 5-year period. And again, this is based on, it's not like a grant where we think it's going to be for 5 years and go away. It's basically the law of the land that this is going to continue.
Ted, let me try to rephrase my question again. Raise the age is important, 2 positions there.
Yeah.
But ILS, you're talking 15 new positions.
We're talking,
Vacant.
we're talking
by
11, 12, 13, 14, I think. But 14.
So he's talking about raises, I'm talking about new jobs.
Okay, the new jobs are recommended by Indigent Legal Services, and they are paying for that under caseload reduction, which is a second aspect of the ILS funding. So there's the quality improvement, which pays for the raises for those that are there, and the caseload reduction, which is additional positions. And they are proposing there's 7 new attorneys and 4 support staff that are being proposed by ILS, and we desperately need them. We're overwhelmed at this point in time. They have proposed, actually, between now and 2023, based on 2016 data that was collected, that we have an additional 36.5 additional attorneys and 20 new additional support staff. I don't think that that's going to become necessary because, as Mr. Connors indicated, caseloads are coming down And with raise the age, there'll be fewer criminal cases. And crime is, believe it or not, coming down. And I don't think they're going to, when they continue to collect data, and one of the positions that ILS is paying for is a data officer for the county, that the numbers will reduce. The numbers that we need will reduce. And they're going to review that on an ongoing basis.
So what's the current caseload? And then how is that going to drop, assuming that we approve of all these new positions?
Well, the current caseload varies from day to day, but we have felony attorneys that have anywhere from 20 of certain types of, complicated cases up to upper 40s of cases, and I'm carrying about 18 or 20 cases in addition to my administrative responsibility. We're overburdened with our caseload at this point in time, and Mr. Higgins, I can't give you exact numbers because again, I was at a job fair in Buffalo, and when I came back, my chief assistant told me that we'd had 20 new felony referrals from the local courts that had come up in just a couple of days.
Okay, we hear you. We hear you. Any questions from Mr. Grimm?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you saying that, we're talking about 13% pay raises for, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 different people?
Yes.
Are you saying the state is mandating that 13% or you are choosing the 13%? Which is it?
They're not mandating 13%, but they're strongly recommending that we have a competitive entry-level salary for people that are coming on board with law degrees.
So it's a recommendation?
Oh, it's a recommendation.
But it's your decision to offer the 13% raise?
It's discussed at length with ILS.
All right, so I just want to be clear, though.
No, they're not mandating.
That's your position,
Yes,
that
sir.
they should all get 13% raise? The incoming?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, what's your position, Judge, on video arraignments for defendants?
My position is it'd be a great idea, but presently the consent of each defendant is required in order for that to occur, and not to be in a courtroom.
So, I mean, the law would have to be changed, but
The law would-
you have no objection to it?
My clients might. Right.
But personally, you don't see a
I
problem?
think that it could be done in a manner that would be acceptable, but I think with centralized arraignment would be more acceptable than video arraignment. With counsel at first appearance, it's been proven statistically to be very beneficial to defendants, because when no one's there to represent a defendant, it's very easy for a judge just to remand somebody. If an attorney is there, whether he or she knows little about the client that they're representing for arraignment, sometimes just arraignment, it's less likely that they would be remanded or have a very high bail set. And there's been some statistics that have come out of downstate that indicate that have been reported recently.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Grimm, we'll let the law committee deal with that, and we can save money and they can bring it to us. Mr. Cunningham, and then Mr. Berger.
What, I'm curious about your turnover rate for your public defender staff.
Well, as Mr. Connors indicated, the state hires a lot of our attorneys, and their salaries are more attractive than ours at mid-level and higher up. So I would have somebody that left my office at $71,400 and is getting in the around $90,000 from the state for a very boring job.
No, I understand, but do you track kind of what that data looks like? So do you know in a given, in a given year you have a certain percentage of turnover?
I have not tracked that, but it's...
And do you know the average length of employment for your public defender staff?
These are metrics that we can get you if you request.
Yeah, well, you talk a lot about the need to raise salaries in order to deal with that reality. It would be very useful to know what the data is to support that.
Okay.
Thanks.
But I can tell you that the private sector and the state are offering higher salaries for people with experience. We train them and they take them.
We are going to be having a discussion of workforce issues on the 30th. Mr. Bergdorf, and then anybody else?
I see this as a repetitive theme, both in your vacant positions, their ILS statewide implementation, and in the new positions with the raises ILS implementation. And you said there was a quality improvement component for your existing workforce that you can take from your ILS funding. How many people is that in total? How many people
I'd like to see the data.
get that above the 2%?
Spencer County's not that far away. Saratoga.
8 people.
So that's the 8 people, and then there are the 7 new jobs,
It's a
which
liquid
would come in at 65,000 instead
Not,
of...
not. There are the new jobs for Assistant Public Defender 1, other than the one with counsel at first appearance.
Right.
And raise the age. They have lower salaries, but the new counsel at first appearance attorneys are at 65.
At 65,000. So, once again, this is based on a revenue stream, which at least originally, I think we were told, was the, or am I mixing this up with the Indigent Legal Services Offices? That was a 3-year grant. Is your funding stream perpetual, or is it also on a 3-year cycle? Can we wake up 2 years from now and find ourselves with a big one-shot hole in our budget?
I don't believe that you can do that you can expect that to happen, because it's based on Hurrell Herring and it's case law in this state. It's not just a grant that was approved by a governor or the legislature and can go away with a change in governor or legislature.
Just to add a little bit more to that, Judge, if you don't mind. There was a $50 million allocation given out for this for statewide, which is for 5 years, to increasing to $250 million at the end of the 5th year. A 5-year stepping increase to get to the numbers.
Where are we in that 5 years?
This is the first one.
Okay.
And it's completely separate from the council at arraignment money. So
Okay.
anything that has to do with that is not included.
Okay.
But counsel at first appearance is also part of Hurrell Herring.
So then the public hearing, public defender salaries are going to be out of line with everybody else in what the state's paying. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I've made this point over the last several years. I always thought it was unfair that we raised the salaries of the ADAs and the folks that were prosecuting the crimes, and we never did so for the AP, ultimate public defenders, the public defenders. I think at some point in time, we're really going to have to look at the salaries that we are paying the district attorney's office, your office, the alternate public defenders, and come up with some sort of a schedule so that everybody's really on the same playing field. Because I think you raise a very fair point. I think we're very fortunate that the state will sort of reimburse to bring these salaries up to what they want to see pursuant to the settlement agreement. But I think that's something that we're going to have to eventually kind of recognize, because it's really fundamentally unfair that your attorneys make less than someone in the law department. It should really be based on seniority and merit. And it's something I've always tried to wrap my hands around. I know it's not easy. So.
Any ideas you have on that down the road, we'd appreciate it. Any other questions from members? Judge, thank you very much for taking your time to explain. Ms. Brooks?
Some cases for the entire county.
56.
2% raises. Because everyone.
Anything out bad, how many?
Just to make it competitive.
Yeah.
Use the same
thing.
Same logic.
What do you have with you?
This is Joe Maney. Joe Maney is my deputy.
Joe, good evening. Welcome. Any remarks you want to make?
So I'm Sherry Brooks. Most of you are familiar. You should also be familiar with the fact that for many years we've done very much with very little. We continue to do that. We have, fortunately...
Is that where the alternate comes from, or...?
Yes. Alternately financially challenged. So we have the fortune of getting some money from the state, as Steve Herrick elaborately explained. That will allow us to take care of some things that we've kind of done ourselves in the past. So for instance, if Joe or one of the attorneys has to go take photos of the scene as opposed to hiring an investigator, they would do it themselves to save money. This will free up time for them to do actual legal work. I think it'll be a significant advantage to reduce their workloads, and it's pretty straightforward. We don't have any raises. We do have a new position with the state funding. And I'll just quickly explain that supervising administrator position is, right now we have 2 support staff. One's full-time in our criminal division. One is part-time in the criminal division and part-time in the family court division. However, we really do need somebody full-time in our family court office. So with the supervising administrator, that person would oversee the 2 support staff, and then we have 2 full-time in our criminal division and 1 full-time in our family
Sherry,
court.
let me just interrupt you there. In the event that we were to staff that, would you see a reduction in the 18B payments by any chance that the state, that we would pay out?
No, because this is strictly administrative. It has nothing to do with the legal cases.
Okay.
Questions from members?
This is a good example, I just want to point out for members. We're talking about an entry-level $4,000 proposed salary by the PD. When you look at what's proposed here, it's $70,522. So you're looking at a $900 difference between these 2 offices that are essentially doing the same exact thing, only when there's a, what's the word? Conflict. So that, I mean, that's a good example for members.
Well, I think historically, we've been pretty much on track to just get the 2%. We've never gotten raises since I've been in charge of the office. My attorneys overwhelmingly stay. I mean, they leave to become judge or retire. 2 left to start a firm together. But my retention rate is great. I think I have a good office. I take a lot of credit for that personally. And, you know, like I said, we've done a lot with very little. So I have a great office. I think that the work in my office speaks for itself. I think that the money that we're getting will take our office from great to exceptional, and it's not really a whole lot to.
Budgetary question, Mr. Grimm?
Yeah, I just want to be clear. When you give 13% raises, it isn't just about the attorneys vis-a-vis other attorneys. It has implications countywide, that there are many county employees who are getting 2% raises.
Yeah, but those raises were coming from the state.
Yeah, even though, but it's still the cases
I-
to remain, you know, someone will call me and say, hey, I'm getting 2%. So I think whenever we give raises, we have to consider the total implications of all our county employees to be really fair about it. So I think that's something we might be missing about talking today. Thank you.
Any answer?
This may be the dumb question of the night, but can you very...
You look into the camera when you're saying.
Can you very succinctly describe the difference between the mission of your office and the mission of the public defender's office?
They're identical in function. So if there is a conflict, for instance, you and I were arrested together, the public defender's office couldn't represent both of us. So one would go to them, one would go to us.
And that's the reason for the sort of firewall between the two?
Absolutely.
And there's no ability to consolidate function with 2 sort of divisions in the same?
No, there's an inherent conflict of interest, which is why we exist, so we couldn't consolidate.
I also just want to make a statement that if your turnover rate is really low and you're in a parallel universe, I think it would be useful for the county to figure out what exactly the magic formula is that is enabling you to do that. Perhaps it's something as simple as really good culture at the top, and we should examine that and figure that out and provide additional training and thought about how to replicate that model.
What's the average caseload for your attorneys?
So actually, I just did a quick run of the numbers today. So Joe, for instance, who's my deputy, has 120 open cases. However, that would include felonies and misdemeanors. So he has 42 pending felony cases. However, not all of those would be indicted cases. So, I'm sorry if that In my world, that makes perfect sense, so if you need me to elaborate, please.
One attorney to another, Jim.
Got it.
You're all set. Any other questions from members? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Nice seeing you guys.
The county attorney in the room. Mr. Lynch, how are you?
Good, Chairman Dawson, how are you? Chairman Higgins? Members?
Sure.
What
do you have with you?
143. With me this evening is Deputy County Attorney Eugenia Condon.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins will start off.
Do you want to give us a brief overview of your budget, or do you want us to just start asking questions?
I think first I should probably address the Wilson-Elser earlier mentioned. That was a contract that was presented to the Contract Administration Board this afternoon. It was a sought-after legal service back in 2016 in which the Department of Laws put out a RFP for counsel to assist in fiber optics litigation pertaining to the Albany County Rail Trail. Today's appearance in front of the CAB board was an extension of a contract to contain the rest of this year into next year for those services. That matter continues to ramp up and is headed towards arbitration. And
can you just back up a second? The Chairman has a question about the fiber optic on the trail. That was retained by those rights were retained by.
Just a little background on what we're talking about.
Explain
The members.
Some of us know more about the rail trail than others. So.
I'm allowed to disclose certain information, but essentially the bulk of the reason for the litigation is when Albany County took on the rail trail in 2009, it was subject to the easement. For over 20 plus years, Sprint in one form or another has had an easement underneath the rail trail for their fiber optic communications. There was discussions over the last several years about who would be responsible for the cost of moving or relocating those fiber optic lines. The contention of the county is that it's not our responsibility. Sprint thinks otherwise. Sprint has asked Albany County to pay for not only the relocation of the fiber optic lines, but also the upgrading of their facilities, which seems like most to be a ridiculous ask on their part, but that's what we're involved in. So no one within the Department of Law at the time my administration started had that expertise, hence the RFP asking for counsel, outside counsel to assist.
Yeah. Got it. Frank, just a second. So the rest of the contract, there was other items in that contract? No? No? Okay. Frank, Mr. Commisso.
Was that easement in perpetuity?
Yes.
It was.
And the railroad got the money for giving him that easement to put the fiber optic underneath the rail, what's now the rail.
In perpetuity?
Was it a one?
No, that's...
But they was
It's
Sprint
difficult.
paying the
It's
railroad?
difficult. I know where he's coming from now.
Yeah.
I understand it, and good luck.
Well, thanks for coming today.
Where else do we go? All right.
Just one follow-up now. What's the state of the litigation? Are you in discovery?
We're in discovery. There's a panel of arbitrators that have been assigned, and we're in the discovery phase. We've been working with our counsel. We've been working with the Department of Public Works, providing thousands and upon thousands of documents that pertain to this matter.
It says discovery. It's not, they know where it is.
No, discovery is a legal term. Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
You want to get into the budget?
So in regards to the budget,
Yeah.
if there's no other questions, it's a pretty straightforward budget.
I do have a question. You've grown from 13 positions in 2012 to 30 in 2013. What else we got here? So now you're up to, what, 35 about?
34 positions.
34?
2012 was the merger of different legal departments within the county. It predates my starting in the county attorney's office, but essentially attorneys for social services and also children, youth, and families
Were
came
brought
under
in,
the same
were
house.
brought in house,
under the
right?
same house.
Okay, I remember that.
So that was the immediate increase, and I'm not aware of any additional increases over the last several years.
So how is that worked out in terms of, I remember there were issues like, well, like they represent social services or law, or, being pulled in different directions.
They're under the same house, we use the same resources, I think it's been a cost savings overall. The attorneys that were assigned to their specific field within those other legal departments are still focusing on those departments and still serve the clients that they had before the merger.
Okay, all right, because I haven't heard any issues, so that's okay.
It's just like, I think bringing a lot of the outside litigation costs into the county attorney's office was very beneficial for the county and the taxpayer. And I just want to commend your office on the good work you've really been doing to keep those costs down.
Thank you, Jim.
You're right, it's a really straightforward budget.
It is, and if I could just touch on some areas. Raise the age impacts the Department of Law. We're kind of, from listening to the discussions this evening and in previous meetings that you've had, we're kind of like the lost department when it comes to raise the age. In fact, we're going to see an immediate impact in the caseload in Albany County Family Court. So as Commissioner Connors had discussed about an increase of 400 or new arrests for our 16 and 17-year-old population, only approximately 40 of those will actually be handled in the youth part, hence prosecuted by the district attorney's office. The remaining portion of those cases can come, and most likely will come, through family court, through the county attorney's office. So what was normally handled in criminal court by our DA is now going to be handled, the highest percentage of cases will come through family court and be prosecuted by the county attorney's office. There's a request for three positions, all again would be reimbursable by the state, for one attorney, one investigator, and one support staff secretarial position. That is right in line, and actually I think that the request is on the low end. I think it could be more based upon the numbers, but I too believe that there's going to be a decrease in the overall caseload, which would reflect on our unnecessary need to fill new positions.
Can you just briefly, we've been going back and forth with the salary. So an entry-level salary for you guys is what?
In the mid-60s.
Mid-60s, so.
We have, Chairman, we have 19 attorneys, 16 of them are full-time attorneys. 5 of those 16 make in the 60s, 5 of those make in the 70s, and 4 of the 5 in the 70s are below $75,000. We do not have the benefit of ILS. We do not have the benefit of the restructure that occurred in other legal departments a couple years ago. We have great retention, and all kidding aside, I think it's because of the people that are in that office right now truly enjoy the work that they're doing. It's not because of the money, because we're grossly underpaid.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes, I just want to make this point again. We know from research, in 75% of the cases, people move from job to job for reasons other than pay. Reasons other than pay. And we've seen that, obviously agencies are always looking for more money for the salaries, but we've seen circumstances where some don't have turnover and some do. And my position is that is more likely to be a result of the way the departments are managed than it is than how much we pay folks.
I'm just making a point about the money.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we say, oh, we got to pay more all the time. We know from the research that is not the case. Why people...
Well, you were making the point earlier about there being pay equity, and I think that's what Mr. Higgins was addressing.
Well, yeah, but pay equity as across
problems
the entire workforce.
Thanks. Any other questions? Ms. Willingham?
Yes. I'm looking at the 100 to 150 new cases, and you said that these are new cases. When you say new cases, is it the type of case that you will be handling because of raise to age?
It's the age in which will be served in family court.
I understand
So
that.
this year being 16, next year 17. So using this year as a misdemeanor arrest, in years past, they would go to local criminal court and be handled by the district attorney's office. Now that same misdemeanor will come through family court and be provided services by the probation department. And based upon what Mr. Connors had said, and I'm in complete agreement, that if they do not take to the services or do not wish to participate in services, they are presented to my office for a filing of a petition and the commencement of a proceeding in family court.
Okay, I guess I'm not asking the question properly. So, do you handle these types of cases now?
Yes, but not at the same age.
Any other members? Any other members? Questions? All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Thanks, Eugene.
So now, 16 and 17.
Any members have any comments before our Board of Elections Commissioners join us? Matt?
I think they will. Second precinct.
We have a couple chairs down there. We can-
Hello.
Nick, you got,
I'm in the middle of it.
Nick, you got a couple, someone organized so we can see them there?
Yeah, you want the company one.
Do the commissioners want to give us a brief overview of your budget proposal?
For the audience, Republican Commissioner Rachel Glady and Democratic Commissioner Matt Clark. Thank you.
There was no significant programmatic changes in our budget. We're basically, it's a carryover of what we had last year. And there's nothing, we don't anticipate any material change in the way we conduct business or the staffing levels or the expenses in connection with running the elections. So that would be my overview of it.
The only change that I would add that is significant over last year is an increase in pay for inspectors, which does get charged back to municipalities.
I wanted to get onto the chargeback.
Go ahead.
On the chargeback issue. Are there any municipalities within the county that are not up to date with the chargeback?
Well, that's a good question. So, I know that traditionally it has been raised that City of Albany has not paid back, and so I guess it got rolled into sales tax distribution. But I'm not sure. I think management and budget can answer that, because the money does not, as you know, come back into our general fund. It gets rolled.
We'll talk about that on revenues, okay? I don't have any. Bergdorf?
On this subject, you've had a tendency to be taking over more elections, school board elections, et cetera. What does the curve look like? I know you're going into a presidential year, or 2019, yeah. What does the amount of elections look like over the next couple of years, and how does it change from this year?
Well, during federal election years, we have an additional election cycle. As you may know, the state has failed. The state legislature has failed to consolidate federal with state and local elections. And so because of that, we have to hold separate elections. And obviously in presidential election years, you add an additional election to that, and we have a presidential primary at times. So it does increase the cost of obviously running an election. Next year we have a county legislative election year, so it's a local election year. And we don't have as many elections next year as we do, in previous years.
We're having an increase in the number of elections, though, if you're including school district elections and village elections, that's increased significantly over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And that will continue to increase.
So the September 2018 primary, I gather some statistics here, the turnout was up 161% statewide, it was up 45% in Albany County over the September 2014 primary. So you said that you have no need for additional resources this year.
Not staff.
Does that workload hit you? How does that?
Well, the turnout, you're talking about turnout versus conducting an additional election. So the expenses incurred with both of those concepts are very different, right? So when we have an additional election, that's an additional time that we're paying for inspectors and polling places. When we discuss turnout, that's an issue of us just printing additional in-house ballots. So we make a judgment call based on, what we think, we have our ears to the ground on what we think turnout will likely be, or based on history, based on intensity, based on campaigns, advertising, that type of stuff. So we just make a judgment call. There's no real metric set in place as to what percentage of ballots you print, but that's basically how we do it. The nice thing about having an in-house ballot printing operation is that you can make a last-minute printing, a ballot, send it to a polling place, if need be.
The issue of cyber attacks obviously has been well publicized. So what are we doing in Albany County to protect the integrity of our voting systems? And I remember, and maybe you could just back up to when HAVA came in and we had decisions to make about whether, what kind of, how we were going to count the votes, how the ballots were going to be handled, why we decided to go one way versus another way.
Well, there are many different aspects of a voting operation that could be hacked. So, I think that there's this idea that a voting machine itself can be hacked, and we're not seeing that the vulnerability is there with that as much as it is.
The scanners you're talking about.
Correct. Like, we actually have, in New York State as opposed to other states, we actually have a verifiable paper trail. So the ballots are filled in manually and fed into the machine.
People will fill in the little bubble with their pencil, right?
And that's you telling us what you want your vote to be, and then the scanner reads it. It is programmed to read the bubbles. If there's a problem with the machine, and we can assess that when we're doing basic things like scanning in, who gets credit for voting, how many, ballots were cast in a particular election district, versus how many people signed the poll book. So we do those sort of reconciliations. We do a 3% mandatory audit where we have to manually count the ballots for 3% of the machines. So there are things we could do, but in terms of cybersecurity, the nice thing about having those scanners as opposed to a touch screen is that the touch screen systems in other states where you see programming errors, like someone says I voted for A and B is what recorded as a vote for candidate B, we're feeding in the paper as opposed to on that system where they're directing the option on a screen and then the computer generates a printout of the ballot of the choices you picked. So in our system, if there's a malfunction in the machine, we can go back to the paper itself and do a manual recount. You don't need the machine itself. Good old-fashioned way. Those other machines, that actually presents a different issue. In terms of cybersecurity, our county's been extremely active on taking steps to secure our system. We're finding that some of the cybersecurity issues that election boards face pertains to, like you see in the news, the hacking in other states of state voter registration voting systems, right? So those are more online, whereas our voting systems in-house, like our ballot creation system and our programming for the machines itself, those are called closed security systems. So there's no internet access to them. Also in New York State, we do not allow by law a remote access to machines. So there's no modem that's included in the machine. So that's a non-issue as well. Can someone technically get to a polling place and try to manipulate a machine when no one's, it's possible, but as you know, from opening to close, it's monitored by inspectors, and there are measures in place to ensure that no votes were previously recorded on the machine, and then at the close, we also have printouts as to number of votes cast. In terms of our computer systems, a lot of people don't realize this, that an attack on the Department of Health can result in an attack on the entire county, which actually occurred in some counties where entire systems were shut down. So we have taken part in tabletop exercises with Department of Homeland Security. We have been doing this along with a couple other counties. Not all counties are doing this. Excuse me. And our county recently was given an award, funding for additional cybersecurity programs and software programs, and I think our IT department can probably expand on that more technically better than I can. But those are programs that will benefit the entire county. Those software programs will benefit the entire county in terms of installing firewalls and those type of items, and not just the benefit of the Board of Elections. So we've been on top of it.
Well, how much do we get from the Election Assistance Commission?
Well, the state itself, I think, received like $55 billion, or some astronomical amount. So
What do
the
you have left
state-
from your HAVA money?
Right. Well, no, so HAVA money is gone. This is a new round of funding. So that money was intended, the new round of funding is intended specifically for the sole purpose of addressing cybersecurity concerns. And our county was one of 4 counties that was recently the recipient of a grant to install a major software program that creates a firewall or some sort of system.
Intrusion
Yeah.
detection system. And it's, our information services has been very proactive in regard to cybersecurity. And we're meeting with a representative from the Federal Department of Homeland Security this week, as a matter of fact.
That's a security alert right now.
Yeah.
And
Apologize for that.
they've been very vigorous in their efforts to ensure that not just Albany County, the State Board of Elections has been very, they've mandated a lot of different programs for us to be involved with cybersecurity. In our county information services has been very, right on top of this stuff from day one. This stuff wasn't even mentioned 3 years ago. Never even heard of it. We never got any communiques from the state, and it wasn't even on the radar screen. I can say that on any given day, we get 10 cybersecurity emails from one source or another, and there's a constant effort on the part of the State Board of Elections to ensure that the counties are staying on top of this stuff. And as Rachel said, it's not really a question about our machines. New York was very prudent, even though they were a little late. They were very prudent in requiring that our machines have no wire communications, modems. So it's not that we're too concerned about. It's more of the electronic voter registration database that could be a possible target of malicious cyber criminals.
These software programs that are written by the companies that own the machines, the voting machines, are actually also do pose some security concerns because the federal government and government does not have proprietary rights over that software. So it has presented problems in previous elections, national elections actually. I think Al Gore sued even to get proprietary information to see if there was a problem with software programming. But right now, it's not regulated by the government. The government only sets standards, and we have testing labs around the country that test these machines. But that is one other area potentially that is subject to vulnerabilities.
Thanks for going through the explanation. It sounds like you're on top of things, but please let us know if you need resources, if you have any issues on that. Chris?
I'd like to get into one of the other topics, one of these big elephants in the room, which is this proposed move that the executive has put out there, from moving from the Russell Road facility down to the county-owned DMV facility. That building, I'd like to give you both an opportunity to address the move, why it does work, why it doesn't work for your office.
Okay, it works well for the county executive maybe, but it doesn't work.
And the taxpayer.
Well,
So we're talking about, what, 325 to 350 savings, is that?
But you are losing, right, money from that the DMV is paying the county as well, correct?
And that rental's going up every year.
Right. So, listen, you know, I think that the issue here is that, first of all, I would like to address the newspaper article, because I think it bothers some people in the room. I would like you to know that when I made those comments, it was very specific to the issue of security concerns that I was raising regarding evening hours and training classes and our inspectors. And, you know, I think that they were taken out of context to a degree, and they were presented, excuse me, in a more general sense, and so they were misconstrued in that respect. And so I would like to say that I do apologize if it offended anyone, and I didn't expect it to be a sort of, you know, to cast aspersions on people who live in that area. If anything, I felt that I was raising concerns by residents living in that area, which has been well documented in several newspaper articles. And obviously, you know, probably didn't articulate my thought that well, but, you know, it was to a very specific concern regarding the facility itself and security measures.
So let me just stop you there and ask a question. For years, the Board of Elections would travel to other municipalities and conduct the training on their home turf, so to speak. But that practice has ended, has it not?
Right, and I'll explain to you why.
Because that would solve your supposed issue, wouldn't it?
It doesn't, and I'll tell you why. Because we're finding that it was not productive in terms of providing inspectors with hands-on training, field training in terms of operating these machines and equipment. And so what happens is that right now we have the ability, we have an in-house training class where they each sit down and we have screens we bring out and we go through with the projector, whatever. That part is less of an issue. But we do open machines and have them work as teams on the machine itself. So that they get hands-on training, because what was happening when we were traveling to municipalities, you can't obviously travel with 10 to 15 machines. These machines are very sensitive, so the less travel time you give them, the better it is, okay? So you went to having a machine at the beginning of the class, and everyone kind of staring at the instructor, whereas now we separate them into groups of 2 to 4 individuals, and they get hands-on training on the machine itself. And we found that it helped significantly.
Right, so your position on the move is?
I am opposed to moving to the location where the DMV is currently at. And I'll let Matt get to his defense, you know.
So you're still, but.
The security is one component of many.
That's one relatively minor issue.
What?
Right, the security.
Okay.
Is a relatively minor issue. The bigger problem is, one, the geographical location does not service the majority of the people that use the board's facilities. And also, it's a reduction, a significant reduction in square footage for us as well. We went through the building and concluded that it is not workable for us right now with these machines. It's not large enough to accommodate our operation. And it's not in a good location in terms of delivery of the machines, having the inspectors trained at the facility, having people who use the facility. We're more centrally located, and that's the fact of the matter.
So Matt, when were you told about this proposal by the county executive? Did they work with you on this, or?
No, they asked us to go down and review it.
Matt, I'm sorry? When did you hear about this?
We first heard about it in the paper, though, actually.
No, this summer, we got a call from General Services saying that there was
This summer?
Yeah, this summer, July or August.
Okay.
July, saying that there was this proposal that was the first we heard of it. So they said, would you like to come down and look at the building, which we did. And we're not impressed with the building and concluded that it didn't work for us. And that was communicated to them at the time.
But you're not averse to a move, but you just don't think that location is?
I don't think that just getting the machines in and out, in and of itself, is problematic.
Right, I mean, we have needs. We need like a loading dock. You need certain things in order to deal with the operational aspects of this. We also have an in-house ballot printing operation. We also house and constantly work on, 200 voting machines. So it's not so simple. We also are required to be centrally located. We have provided service to all county taxpayers.
Ms. Willingham, you had a question? Or are you ready? Or-
Yes, I am.
What?
Okay. You appeared to have apologized, but then you went back to the same thing and saying that it amounts to security.
There is a concern there.
Your apology then seems like you've taken it back, because I don't understand what you mean by security.
I think there's a relationship being made between two issues that are not connected. In other words, what a lot of people don't realize is that, and I think that you do, I think you're familiar with some of our aspects of our operation, is that we do hold training classes in the evening. And it's not just once or twice a year, it's for months on end. And so we have, hundreds of, thousands of inspectors that we train who take advantage of our evening classes, that they come in usually around 6 o'clock, 6, 7 o'clock, they're in training. And a lot of our inspectors are also seniors. A lot of them are retirees. I think it's already difficult to attract people to work, which is part of the reason why we're raising the salaries. And so the issue that I was raising, and that I raised it to the county exec, was that I have a security concern in terms of people parking and being there in evening hours. We're getting calls that people were being harassed by panhandlers in the parking lot when they came into use services at the DMV. And I have to tell you, a lot of the calls that we've been receiving at the board, with the exception of one, was the fact that they didn't want to move, they didn't want to go. And a lot of people have already received services at the current Albany location. I don't think that, it's a secret. So, I think that people have seen it for themselves, that there are security concerns, which, by the way, have been expressed by people who physically live there.
Okay, so let me say this, because it's getting worse. You're just making your comments even worse, okay? And then let me say this too. Now, both of you now have said that in regards to the move, that people don't want to go there. What people are you counting? That's a big question, because nobody lives up there in the Westgate Plaza, except maybe some homeless people that I do see moving around there a lot. But nobody lives in Westgate Plaza. Okay, so wait a minute. So the people that are in this part of the city, they deserve as much access to the Board of Elections as anyone else. The people that live in Bern, I believe they're closer to here than they are up there. So when you make that comment, okay, that it's not accessible to most of the people who use the Board of Elections, okay? Even though the numbers may be down as far as certain districts are concerned, maybe the numbers will increase because the board would be located in the south end, which is not dangerous, okay, which people do walk the street. That school is located down there, the police department is down there, the fire department is down there. I can go on and on and on. And when you make statements like that it is not safe, and that people are calling and talking about panhandlers are all over the city of Albany.
I don't disagree with you.
And so, but to continue to hold on to this position that place is not secure, that it is not safe. People go out to events at the museum. They go to the school at night for events. And I'm going to just say this again. You're making it worse by continuing to hold on to that point of view. And it's insulting that you would continue to say that. If you have concerns with the building, and that the fact that it was not usable, I still don't hear that. You haven't fully explained that to me. You haven't fully explained that. But not only that, with any move, there are changes and renovations that can be made to make the building usable too. But I just have not heard that that
Can I
expressed to
just
the
jump in
point.
with- How much longer is this lease that's at Russell Road?
Well, it's over in, yeah.
Expires April 30th, 2019.
Thanks. Dave, you had a question, Mr. Mayo?
Yeah, what's the total square footage, Matt, up on Russell Road?
25,000.
It's 24,000
And what is it?
and change. I think it's 7,000 less at the DMV bill.
About 18,000 or so?
Yeah, it's something around there. I think 17 or something. I think that's what General Services said.
Mr. O'Brien?
But it was considerably
Just-
less.
just-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And the training at nighttime, I know the police station's only a minute away. Is everybody released en masse? I mean, could you call the police station and say, can you send somebody over?
Yeah, that is an issue that I do think can be addressed. You know, there are steps that you can take, you can have security in the area, you can, I just haven't heard anything in return on that specific issue itself, which I raised. And I will say this, that I don't disagree with you that there are security concerns in other part of the city. I have them now at the Board of Elections where we currently exist. We've had people in our parking lot who have been approached by individuals, whether they're homeless or they're panhandlers, being asked for money, they're older, and I do think it's a serious issue. And because of that, we've had security cameras installed at the Board of Elections as part of an ongoing issue.
But to use that as an excuse, please let me
one of
finish.
several
To
issues.
use that as an excuse and
It's one of
to
many.
articulate it, but you did, but to articulate it as a reason as to
Right.
why that the board should not be located in that building. A place where thousands of people have gone to get
Schools
their
are out
license.
by 3 p.m.
Again,
We're talking about 6, 7 o'clock at night.
Excuse me, again, you're only making it worse. And you really haven't apologized.
I respectfully disagree with you,
Well,
and I stand by my
I don't
There's a
think
lot of
so.
members with questions. Joe's got several questions, Ms. Cunningham's questions, Mr. Bergdorf has questions.
Joe, please.
Mr. Bullock.
Joe?
What would be the relocation cost to the DMV building, estimated? Do you have an idea?
No, it would be, you'd have to renovate the entire building for openers.
Well, do you, okay.
Well, we went through this with the old, when you were in the courthouse, you had to move up the Russell Road, and we had to do a whole fix-up up there over the years. So we have some idea how much it costs to do.
Well, let's put it this way,
Although
just
that
to
was before
move
Hava,
machines.
so we
Right.
have, right.
So just to move machines for 2 elections is like $30,000. And that's just 200 machines. So, you know, you have to, it's gonna cost thousands of dollars to relocate. So it's not as simple as people try to make it out to be. I mean, they're, you
No,
know,
that's what, Joe, go
That's
ahead,
the-
yes.
The other thing is, you print all your ballots in-house now? or-
Yes.
Okay. And do you have like a 10-year or 5-year plan of what the Board of Elections is going to be doing in 5 or 10 years from now? As
Well-
far as,
that's a very good question. And the reason I say that is because as we all know that the political makeup and the balance of power in the state legislature is changing potentially. And so that could impact in the type of legislation, election reforms that either get enacted or don't get enacted. And so, for example, one of the things that I think they're trying to move towards is early voting.
yes.
And, you know, there's no definitive proposal in place, obviously, that's going to be enacted, but generally speaking, early voting proposals include like 13 to 10 days of, you know, continuous voting and voting super centers. And so then you're talking about added costs in addition to what we currently have to pay for inspectors for those days. And if you want to talk about security issues in terms of the machine itself, that it presents a problem because you're leaving it at a location for 13 days or however long, 2 weeks, you know, unattended, so to speak. So that presents a whole different set of challenges as well.
We don't have to deal with that.
Mr. Bergdorf.
It will be coming.
And then go in.
I understand that the lease money is in the budget.
Yes.
So there is a funding stream for, I assume that if no action is taken on a lease, it goes on a month-to-month basis?
Correct.
Okay. So we're not facing an imminent threat.
Well, I mean, we're not facing an imminent threat, but you do want to do something. So, you know, what is going to have to be decided, and ultimately jurisdiction over this issue does fall within the county legislature, not with the county exec. First time lease was signed, it was passed via resolution with the county by the way, which is stipulated in election law that the county legislature has full control over our budget. And it also does provide that you have to provide proper and suitable housing for our sort of our operations. The county ledge did enact a lease in June of 2014, and after that, the county exec went and renegotiated without the knowledge of I assume, without the knowledge of many of the county legislators, and tried to renegotiate a lease. The renegotiated lease, which was subsequently signed a year later, did not include lower rental rates. That was not successfully achieved. What did include was an additional provision in the lease that gave the county exec unilateral authority to cancel the lease. So, in addition to some of the obstacles we face in terms of finding a new location, you may be running into a situation with the county exec where it's like a question of who has jurisdictional authority over this issue itself.
I think, I don't mean to interrupt, but the lease, to me, and to many members, I think is exorbitant. I didn't agree with it then, I don't agree with it now. I don't think it's a good bet for the county taxpayer. I think we need to look at the cost of how much it would take to potentially move, whether or not it's a move to the DMV or to another private facility or another county-owned facility. The discussion and the due diligence to look at whether or not that savings can occur to the taxpayer needs to occur. And
Chris, that's where I was going.
This is the appropriate time to do it. The lease comes up next year. There's nothing that says we need to continue to fund it. I think it would behoove you, the commissioners, to seriously look at this. And if you don't want to go down there, and that's your position, that's fine. But you need to work with us, because I think that, and I can't speak for everybody, but if I had to take a good guess, there's a majority of members who think, we're getting ripped off out there.
Well, my own feeling is that the county should build a facility.
And I don't disagree with that.
Build a facility.
Yes.
For a Board of Elections
We
facility.
should have done that 10 years ago, he's
No
right.
question about it.
Can I
They should have
finish?
done it.
What I was gonna suggest is, Albany has 46,000 voters. Colony has 53,000 voters. It seems to me that the two biggest voter concentrations are in Albany and Colony. Guilderland has 22,000 voters, and Bethlehem has 24,000 voters. You have to have a central location that works for the county. Now, I happen to come from Colony. We have almost
Best part of Colony.
the best part. Well, I share the best part with a number of people here. I yield to that. But it seems to me, right now, we're in the city of Albany, with proximity to Colony. We're on a main bus line that everybody can get to. You've got thousands of people who come in for absentee ballots. They're walk-ins in addition to the ones that are mailed. You gotta have a location that works for a majority of people. And that's what I wanna see.
Well, Mr. Bergdorf, those voters you're talking about are also property taxpayers, who we also represent. And
That's right.
If we can reduce the cost of the lease,
Yeah.
whether it's there or somewhere else.
Well, the other thing we
then
could
it's our
do
obligation to do that. But I
is we
hear
could
what you're
take the
saying.
county executive's office and the county controller's office and the county legislature and move them all down to DMV and free up 30,000 square feet in this building and
Give up that nice office you have there?
Cunningham, you had a question?
Yeah,
And then Mr. Grimm.
Get together and then.
Well, that's what I'm
go
saying.
and
We
do
want to
it.
lead, we can lead by example. We can all go down
And
to
then,
DMV
Mr.
building.
Camuso, you have a question too?
Yeah, I do. First of all, we're arguing over the price of
Yeah,
this
we had to
facility
do that
that's
one
paid by
Sunday.
all the municipalities. It's not just this body. So we have to consider them.
Exactly.
It's not coming out of the county taxpayer. So, let's get that in place and let's do a joint service with the municipalities and get them in the room because they're footing the bill.
Ms. Cunningham.
Part of the chargeback is what you're saying, is part of what.
The whole thing.
Yep. Is that your understanding?
Well, no, we
No.
can't charge back certain aspects of
Only the
operation by
administration of the
law.
election.
Right, correct.
And
So
the other
that's
thing,
part- So that's not quite accurate.
So just, yeah, go ahead, finish.
the other thing is, if we wanna put up a building, we'll put it up, we'll charge them rent towards the building. And talking, Chris, $12 a foot is very cheap in the real estate market. Okay? Is very inexpensive in the real estate market when you're talking all the fiber optics and everything else that have to play into this if you do a new building properly.
Okay, I think it was Ms. Cunningham is next.
I support the move. I think that if you're looking for somewhere centrally located, it's right off of 787, it's on bus lines. I worked 2 blocks from that building for 11 years, and it's a very bustling combination of residential as well as restaurants and shops. It's easy to get to. I also took issue with actually the tactics of going to the media and responding to an inquiry when this is an issue that belongs in our wheelhouse to discuss and figure out what we think should do, and you're right that it is our decision. I think the savings is key, and I think it's about time we look at making that move, and I do support it. So that's just my opening statement or comment. I guess I have a question. One of your primary goals and missions is to register voters in Albany County.
Right.
And that's clear in your material.
Yeah, we're required to do
What
so.
kind of data do you collect about how well you're doing from year to year? And also, what communities in Albany County you are neglecting, and what is your action plan to go into those communities and do a better job of registering voters? Because you may be looking at a gold mine of moving into a community in the South End that is underserved, and perhaps your data might prove that you need to do a better job in that neighborhood, in that community, of registering voters. So what data are you collecting? Can we see it? I would like to see aggregate data, maybe from the last 10 years, of what your registration drives look like, what they're producing, what your goals are from year to year as far as increases, and the overall structure and your mission. With all due respect, Frank, I would love to have our commissioners answer that question.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we are required to hold registration drives throughout the year. We are not required by law, nor are we tasked with being solely responsible for registering people to vote. In other words, as you know, as an elected official, that comes from several sources. We are also very busy agency that processes hundreds of pieces of paper a day, okay? And so there are a lot of components to our operation that we have to keep on top of and do it very carefully. So when we talk about registration drives, there's not going to be this wholesale dedication to having, registration drives, on a weekly basis or, even on a daily basis. We can only do what we can do with the resources we have. However,
So the answer is you're not collecting data.
no, I didn't answer it yet. However, we received several requests from communities around the county to appear at voter registration drives and to assist them in that effort. And that is not only, that's not only in terms of sitting at a table and registering people. We physically go into places, senior centers that serve people with disabilities, Albany High, and we show them how to use machines. We show them how to become acquainted with the system, and we get them very comfortable with it. So, in terms of helping people vote, there are many aspects to that, and it's not just solely reserved for that, but of course, obviously, our main goal and mission is always to help people, get more registered,
Yeah, the
increase that
opening
number.
sentence of your mission statement, the first item is, the mission of the Board of Elections is to register voters.
Well, that is.
I would suggest that it would be something that you should collect data on. And I would collect data on the number and types of activities that you engage in. I would collect data on the number of new voters you're registering from year to year. I would collect data on neighborhoods that are currently underserved. I would look at Albany County and figure out where the pockets are that you need to do a better job. What I heard is that you have a lot of stuff on your plate and you're too busy to do that, but I would
No, I
suggest.
think that's a very negative perspective on what I said.
Well-
I think you're misconstruing what I said entirely.
Okay, well, you said
We're a
you
voter
don't.
registration agency. We have 180,000 registered voters in Albany County.
Okay.
There are many different reasons why people register to vote. One of which is because perhaps the Board of Elections sat at a table and registered people. Sometimes it could be because the League of Women Voters engaged in a voter registration drive. And sometimes it's because their
I got
elected
it.
officials
I
are
got
very
it.
popular.
I got it.
So to
What
task
I-
us with this burden of creating this metric system to measure the amount of voters that we've, registered in certain areas, I
They
just
work for
don't
us.
think it speaks to our general mission as a whole, which is to conduct elections, help people register to vote, which is one aspect of it. And in addition to that, make sure that people have, an environment where they can go and readily vote. It's not,
Ms. Letty, please stop. That was an embarrassingly
Yes.
awful answer, so
I beg your
please
pardon.
watch it on the tape.
Yes, it
I
was.
think it's
Mr.
on-
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, this is ridiculous.
Out of order. No.
That's out of order.
To say that that is a burdensome task to register voters.
I never said that.
You just said that.
I said,
You just said that.
I said,
You called it a, yes, you did. You just called it a burdensome
We have other
task.
members that need to ask.
Whatever.
I have one more question,
We
actually.
got other members that need
We have
to ask
other members that have questions,
I
if
know, I
that's
just
okay.
have one more.
So, no, Mr. Bullock, you have.
I would rather have
I
Joanne
just
finish
have
her
one
question.
small
Ms.
question.
Cunningham, then Mr. Grimm,
Thank you.
Mr. Bergdorf, did you have another question?
No?
All
I
right.
just have
You
one
gotta go to
question,
leave
and I'm
eventually.
reading from Mr. Moriello's
Chance.
statement of support of you, Rachel, Ms. Bleddy, excuse me, that was troubling to me. And the statement says, quote, "We also wish the Democrats in the county and the city of Albany good luck in finding their missing elections commissioner. Fortunately, blah, 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 that Ms. Bleddy covers for." The implication is we have an absentee employee, and I was troubled by that. I don't know what the validity is behind that, but I would like to raise that because that has been raised in my community by folks that saw that statement.
What does that mean?
I don't know, what does it mean? We have an absentee employee that Rachel is covering for you?
Excuse me, I don't cover for him. I'm not his
No, I'm asking
spokesperson.
the
I'm an
question.
independent woman, and I stand on my own 2 feet. I got to where I am in life by
The purpose-
breaking glass ceilings in my own party.
It's a budget-
So with
it's
all
a-
due respect, I don't cover for him. Everything I say
Excuse-
represents my
excuse me,
interests.
folks. It's a budget,
Mr. Graham,
it's a budget.
Mr. Graham, you have a budget question, please?
Thank you. The Democratic Election Commissioner thinks it's a bad idea to move to the DMV site. The Republican Election Commissioner thinks it's a bad idea to move to the DMV site. How many times do we get that kind of cooperation on controversial issues? I want to know what's best for Gittleton. Why do my Gittleton constituents have to go downtown Albany to deal with any county agency? We finally have one agency that's more centrally located on Central Ave, which is closer to the folks in Gittleton.
Mr. Grimm, do you have data to back up that point?
Back
Could
up
you
what
tell me
point?
how far it would take from your house to get there versus
Oh,
your house to this
Well,
proposed location?
given that I live in Gittleton and I come to Albany, I can tell you
I'm
it's
just saying,
faster to
If you don't have the
get.
data, then it's not an.
What do you mean I don't have the data? I've driven to the election site, and I've driven to Albany.
We got your point. Anybody else have a question?
It's ridiculous.
On the committee
had one.
on
Doug has a
law?
question.
I know, I asked it before, and you didn't, you want to join in?
wants to say it now, he has his hand up.
Mr. Kraus?
Mr. Dawson, I think these questions should be related to the budget.
Well, we're
And
talking
there's
about a
enough-
move, which is a budgetary question. So, Ms.
Well, wait a minute, does the budget provides funding for the Board of Elections.
That's correct.
Does the budget recommend that they move?
No, the budget does
Well,
not.
wait a minute then it's not in the budget.
Well,
This move
It's a
is not
budgetary,
part of the county executive.
That does not mean that the legislature cannot line item
No
after
one
item.
is, no one is
Then
questioning
what are you
that.
worried about then?
Yeah, I'm not worried, you're talking about asking budgetary questions. If this body decides that they should move, fine.
Correct. That's why we're having,
Let's
that's
talk
why we're
about-
having the discussion.
Well,
And
the
that would have
discussion
budgetary implications.
is bleeding over into some of the politics.
I don't disagree with that, and I think you're absolutely right. And we've tried to keep it focused. The move is part of the budget. It's
Right.
inherent you know,
A discussion of the move
Sure,
can be part of this
Correct.
budget.
sure.
Yes.
And that's where we're gonna keep it.
Let's
Or at
hope
least
so.
we're gonna attempt. So.
All right,
who's
members who have
next?
not asked questions before,
I have a budget question. You
Mr.
have
Bullock.
on the line property repair and rental, and you got 325,000 for 217, you got 331,000.9 for 218, and it goes up for 219.
339
Now,
for next
how
week.
much, I want to know, how much are you putting into property repair for that building?
Well, that is just the rent that was rolled into our budget. They
You
put
got
it on
two
that
items
line.
here.
No, but there's the
Property
part of it's
repair
rent,
and
part of
rental.
it's repairs. and
What are you
another.
putting into property repair?
That's what
Repair, the landlord repairs the building if there's damage to the building that we don't.
Okay, we are led to believe that that's not all rent, that there are other miscellaneous costs in there for fixing this,
No,
that,
the
the other.
rent is stipulated right in the lease agreement, and it has
Well, I haven't seen the
incremental
lease agreement, but
increases.
I'd like to see
Yeah.
that.
Is there
lease
a
agreement.
simple
So this 339 for next year is 100% rent. $339,000 is
Correct.
100%. So the answer to your
100%
question, zero.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions from members?
Yes.
Lynn, did you have a question?
No, I clarified mine.
Last question.
First of all, I would like to say that this controversy has not been good, I don't think, for the people of Albany County. And to not consider or try to dance around the perceptions that people believe you have for not only the mission, but the job that you hold and the responsibility that you have to everyone in Albany County. And to articulate that you have some preconceived notions as to certain people that live in a specific area and say that that area is not conducive for the Board of Elections because it's a dangerous place.
Mr. Chairman, is there a question?
Let me finish, please.
You've already said everything, you've already said this before.
I'll say it again.
Yeah, you can, but you're just wasting
Okay,
our time.
No, maybe wasting your time, but I'm trying to represent a group of people that deserve
And you've
the
done
same
that.
No,
You've already done
At any
that.
rate, when you talk about, and it keeps coming up, the location of wherever it is going to be. You cannot exclude people based upon your belief or an area, based upon a belief that it's a dangerous place. When you do that, then you exclude thousands of people from being able to have access to the same place that you're advocating for. Whether it's in Colony, whether it's in Guilderland, or wherever we may speak up for as far as being representatives for. So that is one of the main issues here, that you have already blacked out a number of voters that not only I represent, but others represent too. Okay? And so that is what I believe is paramount, and that you understand that that is what you have put across. And we have all said here now, and I'm talking about as far as the location is concerned, okay, that you have written off that area for the city of Albany. And so that now is what I want you to understand as far as whether you believe it shouldn't be there or it should be moved. That is what is not fair, and that is what you have put across.
Okay,
You don't-
Rachel
you don't have
and
to-
Matt,
you
thank
don't have
you
to
very,
respond to that.
thank you very
Thank you
much
very
for
much.
coming.
Thank you.
Members of the
Yeah,
committee.
this is a thought.
No, I know, it's a good idea.
Thank you very much.
And then